On PM Express, we are doing a post-mortem of the just ended 9th Delegates Congress of the NDC, and there have been mixed reactions, whether it's been good, it's been bad, but I've heard a lot of people analyzing what just happened yesterday. So what are we talking about? National Delegates Congress of the NDC, matters arising. A lot of issues are coming up after this Delegates Congress. So by now, I'm sure you know that 15,000 people made of 9,350 delegates and 5,650 observers were at the Congress. A total of 65 persons contested for the various executive positions. I'm sure you are aware by now. And as at yesterday, we all got to know that Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo emerged national chairman with 3,656 votes. And these are the figures he contested. Other people like Dana Bodakpe, Huduyaya, Betty Moldidriso, Danny Annan. And we got to know also that 3 vice chairpersons were elected in this at the Congress. And Awudu Azoka came up first. He's the first vice chairperson of the NDC. Sherry Aite followed, and Said Senari is the one who followed. So we've got 3 chairpersons. I mean, you know, the last 4 years were just 2 vice chairpersons, but this time we have 3 of them now, and you can see the figures over there. And then we came to General Secretary, and you know how heated that contest was between General Secretary General Mosquito and Koku Anyidoho. So people say that it's Koku, the insecticide, that's going to blow the mosquito away, but that doesn't happen because Koku lost massively because Asiedun Ketia beat him with a very huge margin. And if you can see the figures, Asiedun Ketia had 6,644, Koku Anyidoho 1,655. Okay, I'm so stuck with the provisional figures. This is the confirmed one from the Electoral Commission. Now, Deputy General Secretary, 2 deputies, Barbara Sewa Samoa with 3,041 and Peter Buama Otukuno with 1,816. And those are the figures. The other people contested, and you can see George Lawson there, the likes of Kwejo Eduasare, and note this name carefully, Kwejo Eduasare. It raised a lot of controversy at the just ended Delegates Congress, and we'll be delving into those issues right here on PM Express. Let's look at the Communications Director position, and Samit Jemfi. You know how active he's been, and a lot of people didn't anticipate that that gentleman will win the position. Well, people say he's the best cat for the job. We'll see how that pans out. So he beat his contender, Fred Agbenyo, with 4,000 votes. So you can see that he put 6,225 and Fred Agbenyo 2,225. That's a huge gap over there. Now, Deputy Communications, we have Kweku Boahen and Akogan. And Akogan should ring a bell. He's one of the Muncie 3, and people are like, okay, so probably that also worked out for him because he won some sympathy votes over there. Then, National Organizer Akamba Joshua Hamidu beat his contenders Baba Jamal, Anita Disoso, Yao Boateng Jan, and the figures are there. You just can see the margin with which he beat them. Baba Jamal came very close to Joshua Akamba, but he couldn't make it. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. So matters arising, and those are the issues we're going to be delving into on PM Express tonight. Almost 2 days event, the longest in history, because I've covered elections since 2000. I haven't seen a Delegates Congress that has gone too long like the one we saw yesterday. One of the Deputy General Secretaries, Eduasare's name was changed to Justice Yaboa. And pretty shortly we'll hear from his spokesperson, who's crying foul and saying they have not been fair to Eduasare, and they're even raising flags of going to court. We'll see how that goes. And there have been concerns also raised over why only John Mahama, one of the Flagbearer aspirants, was invited to deliver a speech after the event. Why that happened, we will get to know. Anita Disoso also raised questions. And if you've been following politics, you know who Anita Disoso, women's organizer, first vice chairperson. Now she was going for national organizer position, and unfortunately she didn't get. But she was bitter, or probably she sounded bitter when she spoke with one of my colleagues. And she says, all the Voltarians are out of the game, and this is something the party must watch. And how did she end her statement? I wish the NDC well. People think this is very pregnant. We'll be delving into that. So, will the new crop of national executives lead the NDC to victory come 2020? That's the question we're asking, and we'll be probing very soon on PM Express tonight. My guests are well seated, and I'll introduce him to you. Thanks so much for staying with us on PM Express. My guest in the studio, Mr. Alex Segbefia, is the chairman of the NDC Congress Planning Committee. We're supposed to be joined by his colleague Kofi Ato, chairman of NDC Electoral Committee, but unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond him, he wasn't able to be here. Apologies for to our viewers, because we announced he was coming. And also joining in this discussion live from the University of Ghana is Dr. Kwame Asante, who is a political science lecturer with the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana. Good evening to you, Mr. Segbefia. Very refreshing to have you.
Good evening to you, and good evening to your viewers.
And let me say good evening to you, Dr. Asante, who's joining us from the University of Ghana, Legon. All right, so congratulations, first of all, for such a successful Congress. It must have been hectic, because we in the media also had a fair share of, it was so stressful for everyone.
Well, first and foremost, can I say a big thank you to Almighty God for getting us through what was quite a trying period, and a very huge event that had to be put together, but I am on the side of those who say that this was a huge success, not just a success. Bearing in mind the numbers that we had to deal with,
right,
and some of the issues that arose. Can I make a clarification? I am the vice chair of the planning committee.
Okay.
The chairman is actually Honorable Asiedu Nketia.
Thanks.
But because he was a contestant, it was, even though he's chair on paper, he more or less took a back seat so that he could not be accused of being involved.
Okay. Okay, so that's great. So to know that the election went well, and all of us are happy that it didn't turn out with normally the violence we'll see associated with these kind of things. But of course, it didn't go without hitches, and the obvious one is the fact that one of your aspirants complained, Eduasare, complained bitterly that his name, everyone knows him to be Eduasare, but his name appeared on the ballot paper as Justice Yeboah. And according to his spokesperson, he called the attention. Did it come to your notice?
It was brought to my notice at some point during the course of this long marathon. I think it came to the attention of the Electoral Committee some 3 hours into voting. As is the case when such things happen, the committee that is in charge is informed and is asked to look at the issue. The election committee sat down, looked at it. I think they met with, they did meet with Mr. Eduasare himself, and various issues were thrown out. I think they asked him to allow the process to go on, and let's wait and see what the outcome was. If, for example, he was one of the two that still had the highest number, then the issue would still be raised, but it will not still have the impact as it is now. That was not the case, so the option is for him to make a formal complaint. The process and the procedures, once that is done, it will be dealt with by election committee, who will send it to the functional executive committee, and then it will be looked at, and then the process will be gone through, and then remedies or otherwise. But the whole process as to how this came about and how it has happened will be looked into. There are procedures in terms of, this is not the first time this has happened in elections. I mean, things like this do happen, and that's why there's a process where when the ballot papers are done, agents are asked, or representatives of the aspirants are made to check the books and made to check the printing, to check the sequential numbers, to check the photographs, to check. So we have to find out whether these things happened. If they didn't, why not? Because that is good process, the good way of dealing with processes involving elections.
Okay.
And then once we know exactly what happened, then decisions can be made by the functional executive committee.
But at that point, when his spokesperson called the attention of either you or the Electoral Commission, what remedies did you put in place at that point, or there was nothing you could do? Your hands were tied at that time.
At that time, one's hands were tied. It was going to be very difficult to begin to tamper with the ballot paper itself as it was. And it was, but I don't, because I wasn't in the meeting with Mr. Duasare or his representatives, I cannot say exactly what remedies were put in place. The only thing I know was that one of the things that was asked was that he should hold fire, and I give him credit. I mean, bearing in mind what goes into contests.
Definitely.
And the kind of difficulties aspirants have. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of decorum to hold one's self back from sometimes behaving in a way which would be deemed ungentlemanly. He was a perfect gentleman. He wasn't happy, shouldn't have been, but he was happy to look at the things, and then he's gone through the process as it should be. Right. In other words, put in a complaint, and based on what comes out from the complaint when it's looked at, there might be remedies that might assist him or not, as the case may be.
Oh, but I know one thing about elections. Before even the ballot papers are printed out, I know the aspirants are made to go through and check the spellings of their name, whether everything is okay, before the Electoral Commission goes ahead to print out. Didn't this happen in this instance?
My understanding is it happened. That's why everybody else's was correct. The belief at the time was that it was possibly a mistake by the printers. But who am I to say that here? What has to happen is that the investigation must be carried out.
Okay.
Let us all deal with the true facts. And that will be obtained when the process of checks and balances, or the process of checking what actually occurred, is gone into. And once that process is entered into, which it shall be, because there's been a formal complaint, we will then be in a better position to make decisions or come out fully with what actually occurred.
And so how long will it take you to deal with this particular
We as
issue?
a planning committee are meeting for the first time tomorrow after the event.
Okay.
And then we will actually go through and find out what the process is. Because as a planning committee, our position, we were there to plan the election. The elections and the process is actually technically over. So we now have to do our reports and then hand it over to the functional executive committee.
Right.
The functional executive will then be seized of all the issues that have arisen and will deal with those issues.
Okay.
So I suspect, and I may be wrong, but I suspect that part of our report will include this issue. Okay. And then once it's given to FEC, the functional executive committee will then delve into it and look at it. They would immediately have to look at a committee or a group of people who look into it, which does not involve any of the aspirants in that particular segment.
Right.
Because the decision that may come out may affect everybody. So in that regard, it will be looked at by people independent of that position. And a decision will be made depending on what the investigation as to what happened unravels.
We'll be following keenly, because definitely we all stand with Edwasari that he wasn't treated fairly. And you alluded to the fact that, I mean, if you look at the energy, the resources that you channel into this kind of activities, and you end up getting this kind of results, it's very, very worrying. But of course, the other issue would definitely be almost 48 hours, 2 days for a delegates congress. everybody was stressed up. We least anticipated this kind of drag. What happened? I mean, what led to this delay?
First of all, I think to answer that question, one must start by thanking everybody. First of all, the delegates themselves, the aspirants who were involved. We also have to thank even bus drivers, because bus drivers who were meant to take people back to the regions actually stayed and waited for people to vote before they actually left back to the regions.
Right.
So the security agencies stayed longer than they were supposed to stay. The media stayed longer than they were supposed to stay. They went through the whole process. So when you take it from that point of view, a lot of people went out of their way to ensure that we had this successful Congress. The answer to that is not complicated. There are a number of issues that came together at the same time, which did not help us. The first issue that I should mention is that we had the experience of the Youth and Women and Youth Conference at Gomwa some 2-3 weeks prior. And that we realized that there was some delay in the voting. The delay in the voting process there had to do more with where people actually went to actually vote, place their thumbprint. There were not enough of those booths. There was no delay in them getting the sheets. So the view of the EC when we spoke to them when we were planning this, looking at the numbers of over 9,000 delegates, was, look, if you have 5 polling stations, but we increase the number of booths where they actually allowed to vote, we would still be able to do it more or less in the same time.
Right.
That was looking at the experience and where we were coming from. And we all thought, okay, if you say 5. At one point, we were looking to get more, but they said that should be 5. And from the experience, said, well, we should be able to do it in that time. We then got hiccups as we went along. The day before the event, there had been a church service. And the stage that had been built for the church service was a lot longer and wider than we had all anticipated. So technically, it had eaten into space where we would have had polling booths.
Polling booths, yeah.
So we had kind of congested the people to be able to vote. So we had to have 2 polling stations on one side and 3. But in actual fact, the space was not as much as it could have been. So that factor created a problem. So you had all the agents of the aspirants cluttered behind watching. And it was not the best type scenario, but that was there. That was one aspect. So we had to deal with that. Then, because in the youth conference, the aspirants were not that many on many sheets, we had 3 or 4 places where the aspirants were quite a few. So tearing the sheet, which was normally ruler, tear, 1 stroke, you were doing ruler, ruler, ruler before you tear it. That little piece of time meant that all of a sudden, there became a delay in getting the sheets. Whereas there was no delay in actually thumbprinting because they had actually created more booths. But once that delay had been factored in, it then multiplied over a period and you had to slow down the people. Then something we should have anticipated was that there was light in the room, but it's not like here. So you had lights like you have here normally, but you needed light of this nature because people wanted to see exactly what was happening. And the lighting was not in that regard. So we should have made sure that each area had separate lighting other than the general lighting that existed.
But that wasn't provided.
And that wasn't provided. So at the end of the day, we were able to get that lighting. But that also caused a bit of delay before we got it because people were not too comfortable. And when you put all these little factors that I have said together, it's a recipe for delay. And we can only apologize that is exactly what happened. With hindsight, what we should have done was to have removed all the people who were in the observer side and say, now you must stay out, and use the observer side as part of to give space for people to move freely and deal with it. But that was not done. We should have dealt with the stage issue in a different manner, and that may also have helped us. But I think the most important thing was that with hindsight, we should have got at least between 8 and 10 polling centers as opposed to the 5 that we had. It was calculated on 2 per region, 2 regions per polling center. And that was felt to cover the numbers. But quite clearly the mathematics was not right.
So what happened? You had 5 polling booths. So how did you divide
We
it?
divided them in two regions per 1 polling booth.
Okay,
so we had Upper East, I think, with one was with Greater Accra and Upper West was with Ashanti.
Okay.
Because they were the 2 smallest, and Ashanti and Greater Accra the biggest. And then we had Volta, I believe, with Eastern, and then we had Central with Brahafo. I forget the permutations now, but it was 2 polling booths per 2 regions per 1 polling station. So at another point, what then happened was, once I believe Volta and Eastern, I think it is, had finished, we then took constituencies that were in Ashanti and brought them across to vote. But we asked the EC to give us totally brand new ballot boxes because we wanted those ballot boxes to demonstrate that these were Ashanti, separate from using the old ballot box that had been there for voter.
I'm sure you've learned your lessons from this exercise, and as we're looking forward to the presidential flag-bearership contest, I'm sure you put things together and make sure we don't have this kind of delay. But let's look at the new crop of leaders we have for the NDC, the new executives. I've heard a lot of people analyzing what they bring on board, whether they are, they have the toughness to push the NDC to victory in 2020. I've heard so many diverse views. But for you, what do you make of this new breed of leaders you've just elected?
It's a very interesting question, because I take the view that between 90, possibly 95% of the people who actually put themselves forward for this election are competent to have done the jobs they had applied for. There was a few that you would put question marks on, but a good 90, 95% I thought were fine. Then you have to look at the battle you're in. You're in opposition, you're not in power. You have a certain style that is coming from your opponent. How do you counter it? At what point is experience going to be more important than assertiveness? And how do you get the blend between the two? And so when I look at all those factors, I am of the view that we have a formidable force that is ready to take on all comers for the 2020 election. Our chairman is well experienced. And there's a saying that sometimes if you have never lost before, you haven't had experience in life. You want to have been in something and not won, and still stand up and fight again.
Definitely.
The ability to be able to stand up and come is sometimes a mark of tenacity.
Sure.
And that's where Ofosu Wampofo has been. He has been an MP, he has lost a seat, he's gone to fight for the MP again, he lost it. He went for another MP, he lost it, but he came back again, he's won chairmanship. So fighting is not unknown to him.
Okay.
Strength, tenacity, understanding what the dynamics are of Ghanaian elections and policy, he totally understands it.
Okay.
So, like many of the aspirants in that area, he's good. And he has the experience and the know-how, and you can't fault him. There were others like that also in that line, but you can't fault him on that. And even listening to his speech, when he was giving his closing, when he gave the speech at the closing ceremony, you can see that he's focused. He already has a plan. He knows what he intends to come and do.
Okay.
That is good, coming from a chairman of a new political party. I don't have to talk much about General Mosquito.
But what do you think of people who say that Kwaku should have been the one because the Voltarians need a representation?
There is no need for me to ask whether Kwaku or anybody else should have been. There's an electorate. And we have to understand this issue of Volta. I'm a Voltarian, so people are going to be now breaking up. What is Alex going to say? Nothing complicated.
Okay.
The Constitution of Ghana recognizes regional balance.
Okay.
That is why even when cabinet is being formed, you tend to find that there is a need to have regional balance in cabinet. There's a basis for it.
Okay.
So our Constitution recognizes this. But you will find that if you want to practice true democracy, at the point when democracy is being practiced, you cannot apply regional balance.
Okay.
And what do I mean?
When you are appointing, you can. When you are electing and you're saying, people, feel free to elect who you want, you can't impose candidates. You have to allow the voice and the will of the people to manifest.
Right.
This is what the people have given us. But there are also appointments that follow subsequently. At that point, it behoves the leadership to ensure that the regional balance that is required can be met. It is not going to be able to totally factor it because there are top positions and people have different powers. But you try in the best possible way to try and factor it and fill the gap.
Mr. Segbefia, I'll have you hold and
Yes.
introduce Dr. Kwame Asa-Asante, who is a political science lecturer at the University of Ghana. Good evening to you. Many thanks for your time, Doc. Dr. Asante, you're on PM Express, and I want to find out your general assessment of the just ended NDC Delegates Congress.
Aisha and Yobi, thanks for the opportunity. If we look at the election, one thing yes, I'm saying that the election went well, despite a few hiccups. Everything went well. Yeah, if you look at the elections, you realize that there are a number of things that come to the fore. One is that the NDC is battle ready for the 2020 election.
That's a good signal.
You realize that they are battle ready for the 2020 election. Two, you also realize that they've been able to put out more experienced people to champion the cause in 2020, and then they are also able to put dedicated people in positions of authority so that they can prosecute the agenda of winning, if possible, the 2020 election. Another thing that also we can deduce from what has gone so far is that the party is moving towards the changing or reorganizing itself and bringing new faces, bringing in more energy into the political realm so as to be able to do the kind of the work that they want to do.
Okay.
So all in all, you realize that there are movements towards making the NDC more attractive and then more ready to be able to wrestle power from the incumbent NPP government. Yeah.
I'm glad that you referred to the new crop of leaders as trying to bring in experienced people to be able to match the NPP boot for both in the 2020 elections. But we have the likes of Osam Pofo, we have the likes of Asedun Ketia, General Secretary, we have the likes of Sherry Aite, Halaja Azoka, we have the likes of Alhaji Sinari, we have Joshua Kamba, we have so many of them, Sami Jemfi leading the communication team, Akogan, Deputy, Kwame Boahin, Anna Bisiu, and all of these people are the new crop of leaders that's taking the NDC to the 2020 elections. I mean, do you think that this team is formidable enough to take the party to the next level?
At least it's a good team. It's a good team. To start with, in elections, we have three phases. We have pre-election phase, you have election phase, and post-election phase. And you realize that to be able to win election convincingly, you need to be able to do the first phase, get it done well. And one thing that you need is a solid team that will be able to help you to prosecute your agenda head on. Not only that, but after the elections, of course, some people have lost elections. They are not happy. And the best thing to do is to be able to amend the differences, make sure that everybody is part and parcel of the family, and that be able to put the past behind them and then move forward as a solid group. Yes.
To be able to
Again,
move
what you need also to do in the pre-election phase is that you need to map up strategy. And if you look at this team, you realize that you have experienced people like Ofusiam Pofo, map up strategy to be able to contain their challenger in the other party. Right. If you look at this team, you realize that you have experienced people like Seydou Nketia, who has seen it all in this Fourth Republic, as an MP, as a minister, as a party scribe, and all that. These are people who bring their experiences to bear on the agenda of the party to restore power. If you look at Ofusiam Pofo, he started as a cadre, gone through the ranks, and then moved to ministerial appointment, party position, and above all, he's a good organizer, a strategist, and all that. So with other people like the national organizer and the other people coming on board, you realize that they have a formidable team to be able to prosecute the campaign agenda of the party in 2020.
That's
so
good news
I have
for
no
the
doubt in my
NDC
mind
then.
that with this team, if they're able to do what they need to do on the ground, they should be able to compete and compete effectively.
To compete effectively. Right. I'll have you hold there, Dr. Asa Asante, and let's listen to whether, Dr. Asa Asante, please hold on for me there, because Dr. Asa Asante makes a point that we must all now rally behind those who have won, whether you were an aspirant and you didn't win. It is time for all of us to rally behind the winners so that they can achieve the ultimate aim of winning power in 2020. But are all the aspirants ready to do this? Are they satisfied with the outcome of this election? Let's listen to Anita Disoso. You know her. She's a household name. And she says all the Voltarians are out of the race and something the NDC should watch. What does she mean by that? Let's listen to her and we'll get to interrogate that.
It's not easy for a woman to come out to stand for such a position. Right. Though I did not win, but I'm so happy because having experience for 39 years and as a woman going on to Mansfield shows that you are strong. I'm not sad at all because now there is no Voltarian in the game. All the Voltarians are out. So let's think about it. So I will end here.
No. What do you mean by there's no Voltarian in the game? I'm quite curious because we haven't gotten to the chairmanship position where we know that Dan Abodapi is contesting in the race. So, I mean, you're jumping the gun.
Yes.
So you don't know that for a fact, or do you?
I know it. I know it.
So who won the chairmanship race?
They will announce it.
They will announce it. But so I mean, saying that or stressing on the fact that there is no Voltarian in the game, and you mean the national leadership, how is that going to affect the NDC going forward in the 2020 election?
Let's wait. Later.
You think that the delegates have made a wrong decision clearly?
No, they have made their decision.
And of course, the Volta region is the World Bank of the NDC, and they don't have a representation at the national level. That's quite worrying.
You can't blame them.
So who do you blame? You blame yourself. You didn't campaign well.
I did.
You didn't have a good message. Is that what it is?
Yes.
So you didn't have a good message. Is that what it is?
I have a good message.
So why didn't they vote for you? Then Abodapi also a Voltarian and didn't have a good message. He has lost. You think there will be a problem for the NDC clan?
I don't think so. It all depends how they massage it.
So 39 years experience in this business, and she's been organizing people. I mean, at least she organized women, and we saw how active she was in this business. She's warning that this thing must be massaged well, or else. Dr. Asa Asante, do you think that this will affect the fortunes of the NDC if they don't treat it well?
It depends upon how the party want to handle this. It's not a difficult task. It's surmountable. What they have to do is that you have to pick people in in other positions. In other words, you need the non-elective positions. You need to be able to what? Appoint people into position, make sure that you have people who come from some of these areas so that you can have a balance at the top. And in elections or in party organization, people want to see their people at the helm of affairs. And that gives them hope that, look, the party is all round, it's a mass party, and that they belong. So this one, I think the party is easy to do. They should be able to put people in appointive position, appoint them into certain position so that you fill the gap. But you see, the NDC hands are tied in this process in the sense that when you are going for any elective, position, it's always difficult for you to determine who is going to win the election. And at the end of the day, the people's choice will be what will remain, So it's a difficult thing for NDC, but I think there's a way out. The way out is that they should be able to appoint people into positions that people will feel comfortable, people will feel belong, and then people will think that their party has recognized their presence in the party. It's a very simple matter.
Dr. Asante,
but if handled very well, there shouldn't be a problem. But if they pay lip service to it, then they will suffer for it. But I think it's not a difficult.
There are those who feel that, okay, so because there's no more elections of executives for them to fill this gap, whoever emerges as flag bearer at the flag bearership contest should nominate a Voltairean as his vice. Do you agree?
It's a difficult question because, you see, the voters, they decide the person who they want to give their votes to. So it's not easy for you to force voters to vote in a certain direction, all right? But the party hierarchy, after the election of the flag bearer, can decide who is going to pair with the flag bearer in order to be able to get the maximum vote from the people. It's also something that the party will want to consider and then do itself good by getting the right candidate to represent them at that level. It's something that, but you see, as a political scientist, we have seen issues where, situations where people want to play the political card, the ethnic card. This has not always yielded the needed results because elections, yes, we agree that in certain areas people play the political card, it works for them, but look, it's not always the case that the ethnic card can garner the necessary vote for you when you play it.
Even if that area is your World Bank?
You need to be able to have a solid team that will be able to craft messages that will appeal to people for them to want to vote for you. You need to have a winnable candidate. If we talk about World Bank and then strongholds and all that, if you've seen recent elections, yes, we are gradually moving away from your stronghold areas and all that because the dynamics, as they change, people also change the way they vote. Some problems within strongholds, as soon as they come up and you don't resolve them, people want to punish that party in question for it, and they vote the other way. So people should not bank their hopes in issue of World Bank, your stronghold and all that, and do what is needed and do what is right so that they will be able to attract a lot of following to be able to garner the necessary votes that will give them political power. Yes,
Doc,
it is true that ethnicity is in politics, but over-reliance on it will create problems for parties who want to use it as a strategy.
Doc, I'll have you hold. I'll have you hold there for me, and I'll take a short break on PM Express. But when we come back, we're coming to look at the flag bearership race, and we know that in some few weeks they will be going to elect who leads the party in 2020. But one of the issues that came up at the contest at the Delegates Congress is the fact that one of the aspirants, former President Mahama, was the only person given the opportunity to address the delegates, something people describe as unfair to the other aspirants. So when we come back, we'll be delving into those matters. We also know that the NDC certainly cannot hold flag bearership race in 3 weeks. We'll look at whether they are changing their timetable or not. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to PM Express. We're doing a postmortem of the just ended NDC Delegates Congress, and it's been interesting in the studio. Before we went on that break, we wanted to find out why one of the flag bearer aspirants was given the opportunity, but not the others. And I think that will set the tone for your upcoming contest. Why did that happen? You have 13 contestants for the flag bearership positions. Why John Mahama?
Well, I think that you have to understand in what capacity was President Mahama present. Why should it happen or not? The fact that President Mahama, or former President Mahama, is an aspirant for a flag bearership position does not cease to make him a former president.
But it's a delegates congress.
Wait. He is also a former leader of the party. So even former MCs, former ministers are given priority in terms of voting rights, in terms of where they sit. We give priority to people based on their positions. He's a former president and a former leader of the party.
Okay.
The only one who will match him in terms of that is former President Rawlings. He's a former president. He's also the founder of the party by our constitution as it stands.
Okay.
So he stands tall. That is why they are given pride of place. So if you have a former president attending, showing an interest to attend, a former leader showing an interest to attend a closing ceremony of this thing, you don't say that because he's an aspirant, he sits in the third row. You don't do that.
Okay.
He also has the right, as a former leader, to address us. Because at that point, there is no other leader present. You have the new leader, and if you notice, when he made his statement, he addressed Ofosu Ampofo as the new leader, it was said, of the party.
Okay.
Because that is recognized.
But looking at the circumstances, 13 contestants, wouldn't it have been ideal not to allow him to speak so that you could avoid some of these comments that are coming that you've not been fair to the other contestants?
And I say, we are marketing the party. We cannot put our best people back. Now, there's another aspect to all this.
So John Mahama is your best bet?
No, I'm not saying. Look, why we want President Rawlings to attend our functions. He's not contesting anything, but he's a former president. He carries weight by virtue of being a former president.
Okay, if
so
you say
does
you
President
want your
Mahama.
best people to be in front,
yes,
doesn't mean
but
that 13
no, I want to address the aspirant.
not your
I want
best
to address
bet?
the aspirant issue. It is new to our system, and it was done for a particular reason.
Okay.
It was said by the party, anybody who is interested in contesting the flag bearership, let us know formally. Why was that done? So that if you are going around, the party can tell people that this is somebody who is showing an interest, so give them audience.
Okay.
But none of them at this stage are contestants.
Okay.
Because no filing form has been put out for anybody to pick. There are how many now?
13.
13. Let them put down the filing fee to contest.
Has Mahama paid
and
the
let
filing
us
fee?
see. It hasn't yet been decided.
Okay, so then they
So
are all
when
in
they-
the same ship.
They are all in the same boat, but yet, technically, none of them is a contestant. They have all expressed an interest. Expression of interest has got nothing to do with saying, I'm a contestant.
But John Mahama is already campaigning out there.
All of them are campaigning.
Okay.
But it does not mean that they will not pull out at a certain stage.
So you
What
suspect
do I
that
mean?
some of them will pull out?
Some of them are going to pull out.
Oh, the likes of who?
Let us wait and see. I'm making my prediction. If they put the filing fee down and say, pay this amount and come and pick the form, let's see whether 13 people are going to pick the form. Because, and that's the point I'm making, that they are not. You know, we are given a lot of of weight to something. They are not contestants. It hasn't been opened yet. Nobody knows the filing fee. Nobody has asked any forms to be picked up. The criteria for the flag bearer, none of that has been done. But why they said, let us know, was that if you just said, I'm interested in and you started going around campaigning, somebody who doesn't want to see you, a party person, can say, we don't know who you are, go away. And to bring friction, you say that, oh, my friend has gone to say something about me in this place. Now the party will tell all the people at the branch, constituency, regional level that this person has shown an interest. Give him audience. Listen to what he says. But that does not mean that they are contestants.
Okay.
And I'm telling you that come the day when they put the filing fee down, this 11 will whittle down.
Some of them will pull out. Okay, finally, in a very brief for me, we know that certainly you can't have this flag bearership race in 3 weeks. It's not workable. Have you revised your notes?
Brilliant question. We saw it coming.
Okay.
And we decided to change the dates of by which time we should have a flag bearership race. And we pushed it back from 24 months to 21 months. So technically, now NEC can say that we will have the election anytime between now and the end of February. So I'm quietly confident that the December date will not stand. The December date will not stand.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Alex Segbefia.
My pleasure.
For coming
and just to mention
PM
one other
Express.
thing, the flag bearership race and subsequent elections will be voting at constituency level because of the numbers that are involved, so that we don't have the kind of situation we had before.
Many thanks for coming on PM Express. I want to thank you, Dr. Asa Asante, who joined us from the University of Ghana. We're extremely grateful for your time this evening. That's all time will allow us, and you at home, many thanks for watching.